Full Employment and Price Stability by Warren Mosler. Holdings of net financial assets, aggregate demand, and aggregate supply. The understanding that unemployment is evidence of the government deficit being too small is consistent with the standard concept of aggregate supply and demand. Aggregate demand is the sum of all expenditures, and aggregate supply is the sum of all goods and services offered for sale. It can then be stated that if the private sector wanted to use some of its full employment income obtained by selling real goods and services to be held as holdings of net financial assets, the evidence is some combination of involuntary inventory accumulation and involuntary unemployment. Involuntary unemployment is thus traced to a desired holdings of net financial assets that exceeds actual holdings of net financial assets. The aggregate supply and demand approach allows changes of desired holdings of net financial assets to be expressed either as a change in aggregate demand or a change in aggregate supply. The holdings of net financial assets approach focuses only on the control variable desired. The holdings of net financial assets approach focuses only on the control variable, desired holdings of net financial assets, regardless of whether it is aggregate supply or aggregate demand that is excessive or deficient. In fact, it may always be impossible to distinguish a shortfall in aggregate demand from an excess aggregate supply, rendering the distinction unnecessary.